Hi, everybody. Welcome to our community roundtable for AFM Together. I can't believe it's already our last community roundtable of our awareness months. That's so crazy. But I'm really excited. We have a great conversation lined up to kind of wrap up our awareness month. Today, I'm with Rachel and Sarah, who I'm going to let introduce themselves in just a second. But to get us started, first, I am Skye Corken. I am the Communication and Engagement Coordinator with SRNA. And I'm really, really excited. Just a couple of things. You can go ahead and put your questions in the chat section, but you may notice there's also a Q&A section. So today we're going to have an opportunity for you, the audience, to ask questions for Rachel and Sarah kind of as we go through. So feel free to put any questions in there and we'll try and answer them as we go. So first, we'll do some quick introductions. Rachel, do you want to go ahead and go first and kind of just say how you've been involved with SRNA and kind of why we asked you to do this today?
Sure. My name is Rachel Scott, and my son, Braden, is my link to this community. He was diagnosed with AFM in 2016, and so we've had a long journey learning about AFM and learning about what resources SRNA has. So that's my connection here. We've gotten to go to 2 of the SRNA camps, and we just got back from the most recent one a few weeks ago. So we've gotten to meet a lot of great families that way. And I'm also involved with the AFMA, which is the Acute Flaccid Myelitis Association. And I've gotten to do a lot of things to help advocate for that community.
Great.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, Sarah, go ahead.
Hi. So my name is Sarah Mendenhall. I was actually also, I was diagnosed in 2016. And I'm a college graduate. I just graduated this past May. And yeah, I basically kind of stumbled across SRNA, and they've been, just kind of helped me find a community with, support groups, and doing the conference in October that I got to speak at, which was amazing, being able to share my story. So yeah, that's who I am.
Great. Yeah. Well, welcome both of you. I've said this already, I think twice as we've gotten started here in a few minutes, but I am excited for today's conversation just to get the different perspectives. With Sarah, you being someone who's diagnosed, and then Rachel, you with being a parent and a caretaker. So I think it's going to be a really valuable conversation today with 2 unique perspectives. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I was telling Rachel and Sarah this kind of on the back end, but for the audience, one of the main themes that we've been trying to cover during these community roundtables is discussing new normals and what that means, because we know there's a lot of people who kind of struggle with that. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of put up our first question, and either one of you can go first, whoever wants to kind of tackle it. But how has your life changed since your diagnosis, or Rachel, in your case, since your son's diagnosis? And you can talk about that from your perspective as a mom. And then also building on that, have you found a new normal? Do you kind of identify with that term? And if so, what does that currently look like? So whoever wants to go ahead first.
So yeah, I feel like, anytime somebody gets any sort of diagnosis, whether it's, severe like AFM, or it's, something more minor, we always kind of have to change our life around a little bit, whether that be through diet or, whatever the case may be, medications, treatment. With AFM, it's pretty significant. I was a quadriplegic and was in the ICU for 41 days, life support, the whole thing. And, I don't have memory from that time. It wasn't until I really got out of the ICU that my memory kind of started to, I call it stuck. I kind of remember being in the hospital and having everything explained to me about what was going on and, what my life was going to look like. And, Dr. Greenberg telling me, we don't know what you're going to get back. We don't know, how you're going to recover. There's just not a lot of information there. And so, right off the bat, it was immediately like, okay, like this is going to impact my life very much long term. And, I'm incredibly lucky that I have, progressed as much as I have. Most of the time it's not the case. And I feel incredibly blessed and humbled by, how much I have recovered. But I mean, in regards to having a new normal, I feel like my new normal is like ever changing. It's changes every day. I have my routines, I take, my medications, and I do, go to a spinal cord injury gym that is incredible. I'm back in physical therapy. So those things are, scheduled. But when it comes to, I'm dating, and it's like, there's certain things that I can't do on a date. Like I can't go on a hike. If somebody suggested I went on a hike, I was like, I can't do that. So, the term new normal it's for me, it's like ever changing. It's every day is a new challenge, new thing that you kind of have to overcome and deal with. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the ever-changing kind of theme within that, because it is something that I've heard a lot within support groups. And yeah, it's funny, the juxtaposition for that. But thank you for sharing, Sarah. And we'll kind of come back to you a little bit too, just on you graduating and your experience speaking at RNDS. I'd love to kind of dig deeper and pick your brain about how that went for you as well. But Rachel, do you want to go ahead and kind of?
Yeah, and I want to first say something that gave us a lot of peace in the beginning when Braden was in rehab. Sarah was in the same rehab, and I remember talking to her, and she was telling us that she didn't remember anything from the ICU. So it was really reassuring and helpful for us as parents to know that the trauma that we experienced watching our child go through like a very, very traumatic, scary thing, he had no recollection of. So I think that from a parent's perspective, we have a different version of the same fears and worries that the person with the diagnosis has. So it's helpful to listen to someone who's lived through it and say, like, good news, I don't remember that particular trauma. But I think for us, when we think about like the word new normal, it's something that people are really, I think, resistant to, obviously, in the beginning, because we all assume that our lives are going to continue along one straight path. Everybody thinks that our lives will continue with the same normal way we expect them to. No one expects a diagnosis or a disaster or any sort of traumatic incident. So with something unknown like AFM, we see stories of all the different types of recoveries that people have. So it's really, I think people cling to the fact that maybe they won't have to have a new normal. Maybe things will go back. So I think it's a slow kind of like walking into the ocean, like a slow wading into figuring out like what's the new normal going to be, and that it's not necessarily a scary thing. Like nobody's life goes the way that they think they're going to go, regardless of if it's AFM or something else. So everybody eventually has a new normal. Things like AFM just happen very suddenly, and so we have to adapt a lot quicker. And I also think about like Braden was 5 when he was diagnosed, and he was not going to be 5 forever. Like if he didn't have AFM, he still would not be 5. Like I wasn't going to get to keep 5-year-old Braden. He was going to turn into a different person regardless. So the person he's turning into is just a person with AFM. So that's different, but I didn't know what 12-year-old Braden was going to be like anyways. He was going to be a surprise no matter what. So, I mean, for us, how life has changed since our diagnosis, he's the second kiddo in our family, and we have 5 kids. So we're busy, and, we adapt to figuring out what he needs to be included, and things like, I mean, I can't speak highly enough about the camp that we went to last week, because my kids were all able to participate in the same activities together. And obviously we're home together a lot in our house, but they all scatter and do their own stuff. So it was just a really amazing opportunity to get to do things together. So there's lots of ways, whether it's like going to Disney World, where it's very accessible and they are super accommodating, which is obviously expensive, but like, there's lots of ways that Braden can still be included and get to have the same experiences. It's just different. So it requires more planning, and it's challenging, but we're able to, I don't know, do the best we can. And I think, what does it look like having kind of a new normal? It just means our future is a little less sure. I'm not sure what college will look like for him, what kind of career he's going to have. When you have a kid who's like typically developing, it's anything, right? So it's just a narrower window of what might be a great fit for him. But we have a lot of hope just watching other people go through this journey, and a lot of peace knowing that like it's definitely different than what we thought, but it's not terrible. It's not negative. Like, it's just adapting and figuring out how we're going to do this. So I guess that's our new normal. I don't love that word though, because I feel like everything is a new normal. Like, nobody gets normal, right? It's all
right. Yeah. No, and that's okay. Like, I think that's the point of bringing up that why we put it in quotes.
Yeah.
Because people have different experiences and they either resonate with that or they don't. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I just always think about like, nobody is like, I bet my kid is going to have a terrible thing happen to them later. Like, we all just assume we're going to get normal stuff.
Mhm.
So, but that is generally not the case for anyone. It's just different.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. And I do kind of want to expand just a little bit on kind of what you said, because I had the opportunity to meet your beautiful family at camp. And I think your family is just an awesome example of both parental support for a child that is diagnosed and also sibling support. Like, seeing all of Braden's siblings, and it just, you guys were such a unit. And I'd love to just maybe hear, and obviously, your kids aren't here to speak for themselves, but as a mom and watching over these years, can you kind of just talk about the sibling perspective that from what you've seen and how they've handled that, and just kind of how they support and lift each other up, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, one of my sweetest little memories is when Braden was first diagnosed. My daughter was 9 months old, and we were in rehab on her first birthday. So that was like sort of traumatic for me, is like her first birthday party was in the hospital. But Braden at that point couldn't swallow. So we had to like suction his mouth with a little suction machine. And as like a 1-year-old, she would do that for him. Like, she would turn on the machine and go suction his mouth and turn it off. And that was a normal thing she did. So I love watching. I mean, it's funny because like my oldest is 14. He's best friends with Braden, like doesn't think anything differently about him. And that, I think, affects the way that other people treat him. Like, the fact that Finley treats Braden just like everybody else allows other people to come in alongside and not act like it's strange that he's in a wheelchair or doing anything differently. And I'd love to say that because of our experience with Braden, my kids are like super kind to people with, any sort of disability, or like really accepting. But like, sometimes they're still like, punk kids, and like say things that are inappropriate about other people. And I'm like, you can't do that. You should be better because of Braden. But like, I think that's another good lesson I've learned, is that like, I can't hold people to a higher standard about how to treat Braden than I hold my own kids who treat other people. Like, they still act like children, and there's still like work to do in helping them, learn how to interact with the world of people who have different abilities, whether it's like physical or intellectual or anything. Like, it's still our job to help create little like well-rounded people that are sensitive to everybody's differences. But yeah, I mean, I love watching them take care of Braden and ride on the wheelchair with Braden. And we try to be sensitive about not like forcing them into roles where they're his caretaker, and let them just be like kids together, because we want them to get to like play games together and fight together and do all the things that like children are supposed to do. Have little weird sibling games that they make up and everything.
No, I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just had to comment on that because it really was great to see and to watch. And you can tell that that like lesson of teaching them to not so much be his caretakers, but like his siblings still.
Mhm.
You can tell that really translates. And so, yeah, just wanted to make a quick note about that.
I'm
So.
always like, sometimes Braden will like hit one of them or hurt somebody, and I'm like, you're strong enough to hurt your siblings. Like that's great. You punch them. He can hear me from the other room and is now yelling, but
Great. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit more about that. I kind of do want to stick and keep continuing on the support network kind of theme. And Sarah, I'll have you pipe in first if you don't mind. I want to kind of ask for each of you what your current support network or, support system, however you want to phrase it, looks like. We've asked this in the past and have just also asked, like, is it something that you think in your own personal life needs improvement, or what kind of are the sources of support that you're getting at this point in time? And maybe that's changed over time since, Sarah, you were first diagnosed. But I'd love for you to kind of tackle that one first, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So my support network it's changed a lot since I was diagnosed. Obviously in the hospital, my support network was the doctors taking care of me and my family. Once I was out of the hospital and into the rehab hospital, I would have friends come and visit, but it was a very, at that point in time, it was hard to kind of talk about, everything that had just happened because I don't think I understood what had just happened completely. And I couldn't really translate that to my friends and be like, this is like life changing. I think they all thought, everything that had happened equated to a broken foot that was going to heal in, a month. And that just wasn't the case. And so, once I kind of left the hospital, there was a time period where I didn't know who to lean on and I didn't know who to talk to about everything that had just happened and all of the fears and the worries that come with AFM because our future is very unknown for anyone, but especially when you're diagnosed with something so rare, you don't know. And it was really in those first couple months where I really leaned on my mom who had stayed with me, in the hospital every day and, asking her questions about, well, what happened? Like, what did I go through? And, like, what procedures were done? What medications was I on? And, it's not so much that anymore because, I've kind of know, what I went through and what happened and where I'm at now and how I got here and everything. And now it's kind of like I get this opportunity to kind of really branch out and, make friends who aren't necessarily diagnosed with AFM, but, TM or, MS. And, our struggles are very similar and I can talk to them about it. And, I've gotten a lot of that from SRNA and speaking at the conference in October. I met a lot of great people that, I'm excited to, continue having a relationship with. The support groups here at SRNA are great. It's a great way to kind of, talk to one another and really just have a community that understands, what you're going through and isn't going to judge you for, being angry one day. That's like, because you're going to get angry and that's just going to happen. You're going to be really frustrated that you're in this situation in the first place. But besides that, I've also been able to really start looking at, you know, communities that, not communities, I'm trying to think of the word, like places that allow, people with disabilities to like be a part of something. I was really, my family wanted to go skiing, and, I loved to ski before I got sick and before I was diagnosed. And, I always thought, I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that again. Like, that's just not, something I can do anymore. And it was this like really cool opportunity where my mom was like, no, like, let's look for something. And, it was amazing that we found all of these adaptive skiing programs like across the country in Colorado, New Mexico. There's like a bunch of them, but we ended up going skiing in Durango, Colorado, and the community there, doesn't know about AFM very much. We're pretty rare, but just being able to see other people with disabilities, amputees, people with intellectual disabilities, people who just like have MS or AFM or, whatever the case is, being able to like ski with these people and getting to like share my story, like that in itself, it was a support system for me. And even the instructors, I'm good friends with one of the instructors now, and I'm already planning my next trip. I, went twice this past year, and it's just been great. So, my support system has really changed, from the very beginning to now. It's opened up a really cool opportunity to find just a bunch of amazing people. So
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like I'm coming across community members more and more that are getting involved with adaptive sports or adaptive recreational activities, just what it can do for their mental health, and to just that feeling of inclusion of like, no, I can still do this. It's just great to see, and I think it's programs like that are so vital. So I'm glad that you found something like that and we're able to find like a surprising community connection through that way. So that's great. Rachel, do you want to kind of touch on this a little bit?
Sure. So I guess from a parent's perspective, my job is more to support Braden, and then this third line of defense, I guess, are the people supporting like our family. So we've been really fortunate to have family friends that think of Braden when they invite us to do something. Like, we're going to a birthday party tomorrow for one of my little kids, but the mom texted me and was like, do you want me to, is Braden going to come? Because I'll call and make sure they have stuff he can do if we're going to a ninja place, if Braden's going to come. So I'm grateful that we've found families that are, because we are a lot, like besides having 5 kids, that's a lot, but it's also a lot to plan ahead and make sure that Braden can be included. So we're grateful that we still have friends who are like willing to spend time with us and go the extra mile to like build a ramp so they can get into his house. Or, I mean, we've just been really fortunate with friendships. And similarly, even though most of our like close friends don't have a kiddo with disabilities, it's been nice, like finding people who are just know that their future is going to look a little different because of what kind of kids they have. So it's important to have, regardless of the diagnosis, I've been really fortunate to find just friends that we can talk about, like, oh, I have to do this appointment, or we have to do a sleep study, or whatever it is, like, who just like know the medical language and can just commiserate about the extra weird things that you often have to do as a caretaker. So even if it's not another AFM parent, it's really, really crucial to just find someone who gets it and can kind of support you just emotionally in that way. The same thing, we went skiing this past winter also, and that was super magical to find. I mean, it's everything that's like that, every adaptive thing we've ever done, we just like cry because it's so amazing to be like, people are like taking extra time to do something that like to help people. Like, there's a Lego set with a Lego set that we need to buy that has a little skier and a sit ski. And I was like, Lego can have all my money. Like, that, just take it. It's all, I don't care anymore. So I think all of those adaptive experiences that we've had that are people who are willing to take like the extra time and energy to support families like ours, it's just like the most magical thing. And it's just magic. That's all I can think of.
I just want to like say something really quick. I just watched the Barbie movie yesterday,
Huh?
and there was a girl in a wheelchair that was like in a scene for like a pretty long time, and I just like started sobbing in the movie theater. And the guy that I'm like seeing, he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "You don't understand. Like this is." So
It's just special. It's important. Like, we know representation in media is important, but like I knew that before, but now I like really know it. So
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you both. Sarah, I want to actually go back to something that you had said. I want to talk about R&DS because you said that was so special and that was such a cool experience. Was that your first time, I guess, sharing your story in a more formal setting like that? Or what was that like?
So I had never like really stood up in front of a bunch of people and said, "This is my story. This is what happened. Here I am now. Kind of this is what I'm doing now." I've done news interviews and I've done, interviews with the CDC, but those were all different. Those were over the phone or, having a camera in your face and it's kind of awkward and, it's weird and they edit it. Then, but this was like a really cool opportunity where it was like I get to just like say what I want to say, like as I am in front of all these people and just like let it be raw. I cried. It was emotional because, you know, I know that everybody who spoke, really touched on talking about mental health. And, that was like the first time that was like, oh, wow, like these people also struggle. Like, this is like a big thing. And that in itself was emotional, just hearing people bring up the fact that like their mental health suffered a lot. And I was like, I'm in the same boat. Like, this makes me feel really a part of something. And, but being able to just like stand up and share my story as it is, raw, and, nothing was taken out. And I got to just say, like, this sucked, but here I am. And this is what I'm excited to do. It was really special. And then, like I was talking about earlier, I met a bunch of great people and, we talked and shared stories and laughed and, we joked about all of the things that people have like said to us or, have, all of the stereotypes that we like face every day if we're like in our wheelchair or, I park in a handicap spot and I get out of my car and I walk into the store, I get all of these looks like, why is she, parked there? And it's like, well, I have a disability. And so it was just like so nice to be able to talk about that and to have people who get it. And I don't think I expected to get that out of it, but it turned out to be like the most special part. Like, just like meeting the community and being able to, I was in LA, which was like fun. And my best friend ended up surprising me and flying out. And, so the whole experience in itself was just, there's so much that was unexpected that I got out of it that I loved. So
Yeah, that was my first R&DS. I mean, I've been with SRNA about a year and a half now, but that was my first R&DS, and I felt like you did cry, and I also got emotional. And the community story sharing aspect of R&DS, like that whole session, I thought was so powerful. And I know a lot of people really loved that session. People were like, that was my favorite session of R&DS. And I'm like, I don't blame you. Great. Well, thank you, Sarah. I just wanted to touch on that because it was such a cool moment to have you on stage and share your story. And we love you for that. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. But at this point, I did also want to tell the audience that if you have any questions for Rachel and Sarah, at this point, you can go ahead and put them in the chat or the Q&A, and if any come up, we'll kind of try and get to those before we have to wrap up. But I'm going to move on, and we haven't touched on this too much just yet, but I really like asking this question because it really varies and it's so personal to the person. And I'd love to just obviously get your guys' perspective. But Sarah, I'll probably have you start on this one again too, if you don't mind, Rachel. But if you're comfortable sharing, how do you view your diagnosis in terms of how it fits in with your own personal identity? And this can kind of come in with, that label of a person with a disability and how you connect with that. Do you? I think it's something that is really great to ask our community members, because like I said, it's such an individual experience. So,
I think my own personal identity has completely shifted since being diagnosed, and it was because of my diagnosis that my personal identity really did shift. When I was 17 when it happened, I was a senior in high school. I had all of these big plans and aspirations and, what I wanted to do. I wanted to sing. I originally wanted to go to college for music, and that was quickly very much taken away from me. And, I was for a long time incredibly frustrated about it. And, you know, but I think with, AFM, it's taught me so much patience and, you know, not everything is going to work out for you. And that's for anybody. Things change all the time. And it was because I didn't get to pursue that original dream and goal. I actually found something better that I love to do, which is this. I love talking to people and sharing my story and, helping other people. So I went and pursued a communication degree, and, I loved it. And I'm excited to, wherever this takes me. I'm still trying to figure it out. But the one thing that is so important is, you know, kind of viewing everything as just a journey. It just sounds so cliche. It's well, come on. But I think, it's important that, my disability is a part of me. I didn't ask for it, but I got it. And, I'm not going to reject that part of me because it is shaped who I am. Right now in this moment, I wouldn't be here, without my disability. And I think saying that I have a disability is important because it for me, if somebody saw me on the street, most likely they wouldn't recognize that I have a disability. And, that's where the invisible disabilities come into play is there needs to be an advocate for people like me who don't necessarily look like they have a disability, but still struggle all the time. There are times where I do have to get in my wheelchair. And, I went to a football game at my college and was sitting in the disability section in my wheelchair because I can't walk from, where I was living to the stadium. And, we scored a touchdown. And I hopped up from my wheelchair because I was excited. And people were like, what? You're faking it. And I'm that's not what's happening. And so I think just having, my disability is just to completely change my personal identity and who I am, what I stand for, what I want to do, who I want to be. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand with that question.
No, I think that was beautifully said. Thank you for opening up about that. I know sometimes people are still at different stages with, personal identities and a rare neuroimmune diagnosis. So I appreciate you opening up about that. Yeah, beautifully said. Rachel, do you kind of want to touch on this? I know this is,
Sure.
you could talk about kind of, I guess, I know Braden's not here to talk for himself, but maybe
Yeah,
how he
I
thinks
yell loud
that,
enough, he'll come in.
or
Um,
even just your personal identity,
yes.
as a caretaker and how that's evolved and things like that. So,
Yeah, I mean, so as a caretaker, I try to draw a line and I don't want to take his identity and make it mine. Like he is the person with a disability, he's the person with the diagnosis, and like painting myself too much as like an AFM mom or something like that. Like that's fine, but I don't want that to become my identity, partially because I have like 5 other kids also, or no, I have 4 other kids. I have 4 other kids, and I'm their parent too. So, I don't want to, being a sibling of a child with a disability is hard enough. So I don't want to also make it feel like I exist solely for Brayden. Um, so, and for Brayden, kind of speaking since on his behalf, at least as his parents, we try to and I think he does take pride in his disability and take pride in like what he's gone through and not see it as something negative. Like I don't want him to hear the words AFM and think bad, like that's part of who he is. And it's part of kind of what makes him his own special person. And it was traumatic. And I obviously wish I could protect him from any pain and suffering, but it's also like contributing, just like Sarah said, you've found your kind of a different path for yourself that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And we want our kids to have good things. We want our kids to be happy, and we don't want them to struggle. So it's tough to find a balance of helping him find pride and be grateful for who he is, but also like, obviously I don't want him to ever have any hardship. So it's a fine line to walk of like celebrating who he is, but also being like, also I wish I could take away everything hard, which is the same for any of my kids. So, and for myself, I think similar to Sarah, like I love doing this. I love helping parents who are kind of at different points in their journey make progress towards, I guess, making peace with what is the trauma that's happened. I love getting to advocate for parents and do this kind of thing. So I don't know what I want to do when I'm a grown up either, but you have lots of time, Sarah. I don't know either. But it's been wonderful, I think, in just helping me relate, as I was talking about earlier with community supports, just relating to any sort of parent who is going through anything. Like we have a couple little like coffee groups that a few friends and I have set up that we get together just to kind of like talk about how we can support each other and like navigate stuff and help each other make decisions. And, with kids who don't have anything to do with AFM, but I really enjoy that. I enjoy getting to like just help people.
great. Thank you so much, both of you. I'm going to go ahead and kind of put in, this is our last question from me. And I don't know if we have any questions that have come in on the Q&A, but that's okay. This last one is actually for you, Rachel. So in kind of terms of navigating new normals, new routines, and, you had said that it is ever evolving and there's not really such a thing as, normal, as you said, but do you have any advice for parents kind of caring for a child with a rare neuroimmune disorder on that front? Do you kind of want to go ahead and speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, because every kid with AFM is unique, and at every, month to month, they're changing. There's not like one piece of one size fits all advice, but I think finding other parents, like the AFM community is amazing at crowdsourcing ideas and being like, has anyone dealt with this? Has anyone dealt with this? Like, what should I do about this? What kind of specialist would I see for this? Finding the AFM parents, or if it's a different diagnosis, finding those parents to help just get ideas and helps give you a sense of peace that like you're going down the right path, even though, we don't know what the path forward is. I think it's really important to find people just to bounce ideas off of. And then in terms of just like, so Brayden was diagnosed in July of 2016 when he was 5. And then he was in hospital and rehab for like 8 months. So he came home in February of 2017. So I like carried this 5-year-old out of my house to the ER because he couldn't walk. And then he came home 8 months later, like in an ambulance on a ventilator. So it was strange. Like that's obviously a very difference. Like in the meantime, we had to change a room of the house to be his bedroom so that he could have a hospital bed in there and get used to what it was going to be like. We had 24/7 nursing for a very long time. We still have a little bit of nursing hours, but that is like such a shift in what the household dynamics are, to go from like, it's just my little family here, to like, there's this stranger in my house now. So like, shouldn't yell at my kids or whatever it is. Not that I yell, I never yell. But it's still like every aspect of our life was touched in some way. Like there wasn't a corner of our life that wasn't disrupted by it. So it was a huge adjustment at first, and everything has, as it's become less new, as it's become just what it is, it doesn't feel as strange. Although sometimes, like if someone walks into my house now, I'm like, oh yeah, I forget that like this still isn't like normal. Like we have weird medical things all over the place. So but once you've adapted to it, it feels less weird, and you can make those little pivots of like, okay, we don't need this anymore. We're going to cut back on therapy, or we're going to do some more therapy. So I think it's just like, it's an ever evolving balance. And I think it's really important for us. This has been hard for me because I think in the beginning, you just want your kid to do like therapy, like all the therapy, all of the time. Like we're just going to get as much as we can, which is why we were in the hospital for 8 months, because we were like refused to be discharged from rehab. But you have to like listen to your child and like take cues from them of, I want to scale back on the therapy. I don't want to do this anymore. Like maybe we talked to Braden a lot about, do you want the nurse to go to school with you, or do you just want like a paraprofessional to help you? And trying to be respectful of what he wants, because it's his life that he's living. And, you know, sometimes we have to be like, no, we need to do this. But I try to listen to him and help him guide us with what he thinks is best for his routine or his therapy or whatever. Obviously he's still a child, but you know, we have to take our cues from him as best we can and try to let him have that, you know, childhood.
Yeah. No, that's awesome advice. Thank you, Rachel. Well, we're coming down to the last few minutes, but before I close things out, did either one of you have any kind of final thoughts for anybody watching? Sarah, if you had any final thoughts for people your age who might be watching this conversation, just any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. Just, you know, this happened, it's coming up on 7 years, I think, you know, since my diagnosis. And I am just now getting to a point, like this past year, where I have really been able to fully accept, you know, where I'm at. And I like want to make it clear to like people who have, you know, either are older and have been diagnosed, or even like young kids, like it's gonna take time to mentally get to a place where you're like, okay, I can breathe. Like I'm in this spot now, and it's kind of at this point where like, okay, like I can do something with this if I want, you know. I think there's a big pressure, you know, when you get diagnosed with something, people expect you to become like, you know, this like really important advocate, or, you know, speak out on things and do this. And I mean, I like to do that. So like I'm fine with that. But I think there's like something important to be like, you don't have to do that. Like you can just be, and, you know, get through processing whatever just happened, because it is like a wild journey that, you know, not a lot of people have answers to. So
Thank you. I wish I had like the Zoom clapping reactions on here because I wanted to give you one, but that's okay. Rachel, did you have any final thoughts before we part today?
I actually love what Sarah just said. So coming in as the parent, like I do try to be mindful of, like, I don't want Braden to feel like he has to be forced to be some inspiring figure or some like poster child, or like he doesn't exist to be the object of like people's inspiration or like something they use to make themselves feel good. Like I prayed for this child today, you know. So I try to make sure that as much as we can, he doesn't feel like in addition to the burden that a disability is, a burden of having to be a certain kind of person for other people. Like he gets to be his own person. He doesn't have to like inspire people. That's not his job. So I love that you said that, Sarah. I feel and he was 5 when it happened. So like the way his brain is going to process it, he's not even to the age that you were when you were diagnosed. So he's got a lot of like journey and figuring out what this means to him. That's his thing that we have to support him in.
Great. All right. Well, thank you both so much for being here for our last community roundtable. I can't, like I said at the start, I can't believe it's our last one, but I appreciate both of you for opening up and sharing your personal experiences. I know sometimes that can be difficult, but just sharing in this way, it really just makes such a difference, and it really can make an impact on, somebody who's watching. So thank you both again.